right, even though we're doing like I Am City, I think we can obviously segue and maybe we'll make this, like we've got a couple of topics left I think we've got time for. What I would ask you on is this, right? As I said, behind the scenes, it is all but confirmed Twistzz will be on Liquid. Like, that's basically the story I've heard. Like, I know initially it was going to be like, is it Falcons this one? Basically, from what I'm hearing, it really is the case behind the scenes. He picked Liquid. That's what it's going to be. They're going to make this Liquid lineup with Zeus and Skulls. And like, that one, as far as I know, is pretty solid. It's going to be Cadian. Like, from what I'm hearing behind the scenes, that is actually going to be the lineup. And the only reason it was delayed is like, I won't say who, but basically, like, instead of Skulls, they were maybe going for some other bigger names. And that was the one they fell back to, was the gamble, the prospect. They were actually trying to do a super team, as far as I've heard. And I'll say the names when the statute of limitation passes, boys. But I can't for right now.
We've heard a few. There were a few names.
But there was even more. There was a lot of people I've heard they sort of asked for this one. They really like tried to, there was one of those big boards where you're doing this and this and this. So, okay, based on this idea, obviously now it's mad because you just won an event, but now Twistzz leaves, which is like, because the one thing I think is this, and there's another, I'll do what I just did with Elise. I don't think when you have a winning lineup, you ever break the lineup until you know you can't win. And if you look at FaZe, dude, this almost cracked me up. On the HLTV article, where they were, I think it was the article, not Twitter, when they were writing about FaZe winning the event, they phrased it like this, Maniac. And all I want to do is just put yourself in this context, right? You were a professional player. You had a long career. They phrased it like this. It was something like, and FaZe broke their drought of not having won events since, it was like March. Like, what? How many events are you... HLTV writer, how many events do you think a pro player is supposed to win? Like, are you aware, like, it's pretty good to win events? Like, and by the way, I'll just put it in context also of the other players. Like, it's not like Vitality's won 5 events. It's not like Heroic's won 5 events. It's not like Ents has won... Whoa, G2's won 2. Vitality's won 2. Like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, 3, sorry. Like, I think you're overreacting to the not winning their part, but at the same time, they weren't winning the championships. It's true, and they were always going out. They were doing a bit of a call themselves. They were doing a tier 0.5 call, essentially. They would always be like, oh, we almost beat them. Oh, we almost got them on 2 maps when they got us on the 3rd minute. So at the same time, part of me is bummed about this. It's like, I don't ever want you to leave. It's why it's not that I know the Na'Vi lineup could have kept doing it. It's that we'll never know because they broke the lineup up and kicked Boomage. And I know it's sad, but I need to know. I just need to know that it did. I actually need to know it didn't work minute. Then I'm like, phew, right. It's okay. He can go. We can bring in the new guy. But I don't ever want to believe, like, there was like 5 more championships in us, but we didn't keep the lineup together. So in this particular case, part of it feels like a bummer that Twistzz leaving because you actually are going to mess up this whole thing. And as I said earlier about how the stars of the team sort of did it by committee, the thing that's crazy is I know there's no way Carrigan and FaZe actually could know how those players would fit together. At best, you speculate. At best, you have conversation. And what would you do? But you never know until it goes into the survey. It's why so many super teams have failed. But I do think that was one of the most uniquely sort of balanced. Like, I think it's one of the best well-balanced teams of all time. That's why, if you notice, my contrast was always Fnatic 2015 because it's the same thing. It's like you had this mix of players and it's just the way they overlapped and then fit together, which made this crazy team play. But here's the weird thing. On the one hand, I hate it. Like, I don't want them to break, so I want to keep it going. But at the same time, and this is why I did that little line earlier, it might be like, what, Elise? The best NA player? Have you seen Twistzz? She's winning all the Grand Slam. It's like, bro, if you look in FaZe, if we're talking about the 3 stars, Twistzz was the lowest performer of the 3 stars consistently. He had the Cologne one where he could have had the MVP. That's it. All the other titles they won, by the way. Go look. He's sometimes like 1.707 rating when they win the event. So to me, that's like, if you say like, he's the NA GOAT, it's like, why does he get that championship? But for example, Elise didn't get this championship with like a 1.25 rating. Like, I think that's where people get lost in the narratives, right? So what I'm going to say is this. It'll be shocking because everyone was just talking about Rain going out. But I have to say, if you actually look how he generally played in FaZe, look, he did his part when they won the championship and he was like enough. But I never actually saw him ever as the best player in FaZe. Like for me, that was always between like Brokey and Rops, basically. It was depending on what map it was, what tournament it was. Sometimes even Rain would actually outperform Twistzz at a tournament. Essentially, as much as this will sound sacrilegious, I do like Twistz's game. I don't think this is the player that's impossible to replace Maniac. I think there's a lot of really skilled riflers you could bring in and you could sort of get right back to winning ways, potentially, if you FaZe.
Yeah, okay. I'll probably meet you halfway. I agree that there would have been players who'd been more harmful to replace. For example, if Rob's just said I'm out, then I think Rob's really
that's the main one.
Unique. Yeah. He's kind of a unique profile, right?
Yes.
I do believe that in terms of if you put Rain on a pedestal in terms of low maintenance player who doesn't really get a whole lot, I think Twistzz is kind of the same way. I don't think Twistzz gets a lot. I think Twistzz makes the best out of whatever he needs to be put in. So I don't believe he's going to be impossible to replace. But I am very surprised by the move. But what this tells me, actually, and this is why I'm kind of validated in my analysis of this victory of FaZe Clan, is that there must have been issues ramping up and growing the past few weeks and months that have led him to the idea that going somewhere else was the right move.
Yes.
And this victory in Sydney is so contextual, and as impressive as it was, is so contextual that it isn't enough to reframe your future thinking, well, hold on a second, maybe I was wrong. Actually, I think we can keep winning together. They might, and I say it might be more than one player, but they might have the idea that, okay, we've this perfect storm that just hit us. We don't know if this is something that can keep on going. And all of the issues that we've had in the past probably are still true and valid. If you talk about motivation and CS2 being an extra like 5-10%, I get that. I understand. I think it's the same for a whole lot of players. But eventually, this is a boost that has an expiration date. You're not going to get plus 10% motivation always. Oh, no. If there were issues in the team, eventually it will catch up to them. So that in itself, I think is very telling of the situation of FaZe. And they did look a little bit out of breath. Because, yeah, I agree with you. I think when you say, oh, the drought of trophies, of course, we're being over dramatic. But they did look out of breath in the past events prior to Sydney. Like they
definitely had some third maps where they just got dusted off by people and then got home in embarrassing fashion, sure.
And it was very, very uncharacteristic of FaZe Clan. They had a few of these moments. Now, to talk about like the Liquid move as a whole, I think it is a very big risk for Twistzz to go to Liquid. I know there's a pre-existing relationship between him and the org, and he's probably had a sentimental connection to it. I can understand that. I can empathize with that. But you said it, like FaZe. How many lineups did FaZe need to put together to get to the point where they had that perfect balance in this project? Like a million, I'm exaggerating, a million players put that jersey on until we got to the point where, okay, hold on a second, this is working, this is perfect. Yes. We have all the roles, we have our aggressive, we have our passive players, we have our late rounds, we have our early rounds, we have everything. Bro, it's like, the only thing I can imagine is the two main setting arguments have to be the quality of the roster individually, and players like I do think Naf is still underrated. I think Naf is probably one of the most underrated player in the history of Counter-Strike overall. I rate him very, very highly. I do believe that Yekinder, off of the IGL's duty, can still deliver better than what he was doing. So individually, I can see it. And then it has to be the promise of playing with KDN that has some sort of attractiveness to it. It must be you got to play with KDN. It must be the idea, because otherwise I don't understand why.
For you, but keep going. I've got a counterpoint for you. Here's the angle. You've done what we all do. I do it myself all the time, mate. No one ever talks about the coaches. Who's going to be the coach of Liquid Maniac?
I think it's going to be Zeus. Now Zeus.
Zeus was there when Twistzz popped off in Liquid. So all I'm going to say is this. Here's the thing, because let's put the narratives together from all the interviews. Everyone's seen those as far as I know, but those photos aren't fake. Twistzz really was the guy where, even if I'm saying his numbers weren't that great, he would grind the game out as soon as you get eliminated and be like, fuck, what am I doing wrong? Like, Carrigan, is there something I could do about my game? He was a guy who wanted to be better. And I actually got the sense, by the way, even though they've won, I mean, they haven't won as much like we're talking about. I did get the sense, even if they've won, not to be egotistical, but he did sort of think like, yeah, but I'm not like Twistzz 2019 when I win, am I? It's not like I'm like a star player while we win. Sometimes I'm contributing here, or I have a map here. I do get the sense that sometimes maybe he felt a little bit out of place in the team in that regard. And so all I'll say is, first of all, go back to Liquid, like we're saying, there's a lot there, by the way. The KDN angle's brilliant. Naf's already your boy already. Spoiler, I'll just throw this out there, and again, we'll come back to it months later, don't worry. I will say, two of the players, their best pals on, we love each other. There was a little bit of friction between Elysian and Twistzz. I'm just going to say that. Just going to put that out there. I mean, I think actually one of the issues they had in their game is, if you look at them, eventually, after years, their game's sort of settled not too dissimilar. They are sort of maybe players that would be in similar roles. So I always got the sense, if you think about what I said earlier of Elise, the problem was, it's Elise's team. So if you're Twistzz, you can only ask for so much, And actually, as you saw, dude, they might even bounce you for falling. Like, they didn't necessarily hold you in the same regard. Well, here's the thing. Elise is gone, mate. There's no Elise. It's okay. It's okay. You can come out to play now. Elise is gone, and your boy Zeus is there again. I'll tell you what, Zeus is another guy, by the way. I view him as a coach, a bit like Carrigan as an IGL. It's brilliant at working as a stars. He'll find a way to bring the best out of people. He's got a really good attitude, actually. Obviously got mad experience with Zeus and with Twistzz and a bunch of other people. I wonder if that's part of it as well, because you're right. The most telling part about this is the way the story came out. When the initial story was, what's happening is Twistzz is just joining that Falcon super team with Nico, and that just sounds like someone gave him like an extra zero on the check, and he was like, well, fuck it, cash out. that one would be a reason to go. If you then choose Liquid over that, spoiler, Liquid's not going to be paying what the Falcons one is. That you're right. I hadn't even thought that. That actually implies no, you just want to leave FaZe. You want to be in a different setup, and in this case, maybe you do want to go back. A lot of people don't know this. This is the thing in people's careers. If you were Twistzz, you might have thought you retire in Liquid, just like Elise probably thought you did. So if you sort of get a chance to go back while you're good and like do it right, and let's have like the second chapter of my career, maybe you do it, maybe you run it back. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely some enticing parts to this whole roster that's being put together. Obviously, it's just media reports at the time, but as you say, things point out towards it actually happening. I do think you have
your expectations for it. If we make the lineup you've seen on paper, so the lineup on paper is, like you say, you Kindar off IGL, Naf's in his normal spots, Skulls is going to come in as like an aggressive rifler, and then you've got Twistzz comes back, probably like semi-lurk or something, and then you've obviously got Cadian's going to be AWP and IGL. What do you think of this lineup? Like for you, is it like, I mean, I dread to use the word super team, but is it going to be like a crazy roster? Is it going to be an elite team for you immediately? Are you hyped?
Honestly, yes, I am hyped. I think it gets my attention for sure. What I do wonder is, I think a lot of that team is going to depend on Cadian's ability to rally these people under like a single umbrella of Counter-Strike. And it feels like a huge ask. A huge ask. Because, of course, Yekinda has an idea how he wants to play Counter-Strike. I think it's already been proven. He went from being a secondary caller to an IGL, so definitely he has a propensity to take control of whatever is happening. So you have to have Cadian and Yekinda sort of handshaking or shaking hands and agreeing on the Counter-Strike they want to play. They're going to need to do that very, very quickly, because if that doesn't work, then that you can already put that project to bed. Like, I think that's it. That there's a first obstacle right there. Aside from that, I think that there's enough individual power in there to maintain some sort of a floor level of being dangerous from the get-go. Skulls is a bit of a gamble. I think he and Zevi were kind of put together as these next or soon to be incredible players from Brazil. I think Zevi already showed a propensity to be a little bit to what's it called, choke a little bit in like high stage and like important moments. I've seen him already falter a little bit.
He's it's harder to jump up, sure.
Exactly, yeah. So, not the same with Skulls. I feel like he was, whenever I put my eyes on his playstyle, I feel like he was delivering all the time. So I would say the gamble is interesting, and as a secondary solution, because as it sounds, it was not necessarily the first name on the list, but I do think it's an interesting gamble. And after all, time moves forward, so you might have to gamble on a new and upcoming player. So why not? But I do think that Yekinder off the IGL role, I think, and this is my problem, and here this might be a point where you and we can debate on. I don't think it's that easy for a player that used to be really good to then have to go through the drought of sucking as an IGL and then just revert it automatically back to whatever it is you were doing in the past with the same kind of confidence and the same kind of performance. That is a little bit of a gamble. Like, if you tell me right now, listen, Maniac, Yekinder is going to do exactly what he was doing in VP. I saw it in the future. I saw my crystal ball, and it's going to happen. I would say, holy shit, that's amazing. Wow, you have this aggressive player. You have Naf as a closer, end of rounds. You have Cadian, who's going to be like the maestro, diving in, and Twistzz is going to be closing as well. It's going to be great. But yeah, I mean, where is Yekinder's confidence at right now? Like, what do we expect from him?
Okay, I get you. Okay, we'll do it then. Because here's the thing: I was trying to sort of bait you into just saying it'd be amazing off the bat and everything would be awesome. But as usual, Maniac, you're like an onion. You have more layers than I ever expected. So okay, we'll do it then. We'll break it down, because I sort of agree with you. The problem with this one is, this is one of those ones where on paper this looks fucking amazing. Even the angle I said of Zeus coming back, I'm a massive Zeus fan. Like, I think every team he touches, basically, he gets like more out than you'd expect, or he gets them to a very good level. So I always thought, by the way, it was a crime that, like, basically behind the scenes, he's one of the people who had some issues with EG, and maybe they didn't put in the money they should to get the players they should when he used to coach them. So sadly, he never got the gigs after that. He was never getting these offers. I was always out there on Twitter saying, your G2 should pick him up to control Nico. Why doesn't this maybe Furia get him? They can get the other players and Art under control. I was always trying to give him the big gig. I'm glad he's got the TL one. Obviously, they're going back to the well on that one. They know he's a great coach, etc. But the key thing and also I'll just say this right now, if you're an NA fan, Zeus is the one who kickstarted the era of Liquid being like an elite team who could actually win everything. Yes, he didn't get it over the line with the Grand Slam one in 2019, but in 2017 going into 2018, he was the one who took them to finals, dude. Before that, look, NA could like fluke a tournament. They weren't making like semis and finals every time. Like, he made that team elite. So I will say, if you're Liquid, I'm very glad you actually did sort of like revisit this. So that one I'm kind of safe on. Like I said, the NAF one, I told NAF this himself on camera, off camera. He just mastered his game. You'd be a fool to shift NAF's spots and roll. He's a player it's actually incredible. You just keep him in his positions. You don't worry about him, especially because he's so unique. So no one else is taking his spot anyway. You'd be a fool to bring someone in, unless, by the way, it is literally Rops or something like. I'm not taking any other lurker than Naf right now. So if I take Naf, the joke is this though. Every other player, like you say, you hinted at, every other player has a gamble element. But this is where you've got to think of the angles to get it. So I'll do it like you. For Yikinda, that is a very real phenomenon. Dude, that has even hit players like fucking Shocks. Even if people don't understand, Shocks is one of the most transcendent talents probably ever to play in esports. Fucking Counter-Strike. Like, this guy, for real, it felt like you could trip over and get in a world-class form again. Every time he went to IGL, mate, it would take a bit from his game, and then you were just gambling, like flip a coin. Is he actually going to be really amazing next year? Is he not? I don't even think he knew. So the Yikinda one is a very legit one, because what people won't understand is this. Yikinda has sick headshot aim, but that isn't actually what made his fucking crazy entry game. His crazy entry game clearly was based on a mixture of, I do think this is why he became an IGL. I do think he studied demos. I do think he tried to figure out opponent spots. And then also, he had that magic feel as an entry on T-side. Now, here's the downside of that. That's also why when the feel was off or he looked like he was nervous in a major, that's why he could fuck up the half too. Because then he would maybe like, he doesn't have the feel. Should I do the peak now? Do I do it slow? Do I do it fast? Do I say last time, I came in like sort of like contact pace, and this time I just hit him like a ton of bricks. When that feel was off, he didn't look like the same genius to me. So that's a gamble when you go away from that style. And remember, the silliest thing they did in their team was basically bring Patsy in and go, you're sort of like 80% of your Kindar. Go to work. And it's like, you even gave that guy all your spots, you know what I mean? So that was already did. I'm with you on that one. That's not the guarantee that everyone hopes it is, even though we all agree. No one was really a fan of him as an IGL, quite frankly. Then you go to the others. On the Twistzz one, like I just said, I get the sense he's going to be changing roles up. I don't think he's going to be the same Twistzz from FaZe. So I don't know how he adapts to that. In some ways, on a higher level, this is like the Elise to complexity move, right? Okay, maybe you can have better roles. Are you going to go into them? Are you the player you once were? Then on the Skulls one, look, he's the biggest gamble. It's obvious, right? But the good one about that is, if any of these other gambles works out, I think he can even survive if it doesn't work for now. And I agree with you. Of all the players in the Brazilian scene, Skulls and Zevi were two of the most obvious ones, not least because they weren't ever on Furia. They weren't even in a team that was in abroad. They weren't even MIBR's in the bloody. They at one point in time were in like the Blast system, and their little players could go and play there. You'd see them play more times. Basically, if you're paying, you always played the RMR into a major, and then that's why if you're someone like Zevi, it sucks. You basically farm tier 2, go to tier 1, you try to AWP them, and it's Zero you're playing against, so you get your head kicked in and you look shit. I'm with you. Skulls look like the most obvious one. He would even sort of hold up then. And his skills seem good. And also, the other very promising thing for me is, if you go and look, he essentially only started playing these lands in something like the latter part of last year, mate. Like, he isn't a guy, he's quite young. He doesn't have this crazy history. He's not like an established player. This isn't like getting like Cello or something. We've seen him play a billion years, mate. He's from Luminosity about 5 years ago or something, That player I know isn't going to make a jump up. He's probably going to be a 0.67 kill per round player. Skulls really does look like there's real talent there. So like I say, that one is more like, I need that to be a gamble I can handle it. The Cadian one is the spiciest one. Because first things first, we're all going to do this. When I see that move and I just look on paper, it's actually because no one thought it was possible. No one ever thought he could leave Heroic or he would leave Heroic. And if he does leave Heroic, he's only going to Astralis right now. No one's even had this as a pathway. So because we've never even considered the counterfactual that he goes and joins Liquid, when you actually look at it on paper, if this was Zeus, you are a fucking genius, mate. Because Liquid has never worked around a primary AWPer since Simple. The rest of the time, it was Nitro and then Aussie. And if you ever saw Aussie, they never even really gave him a chance. They never put him in the spots. They never gave him the resources. They always sort of knew, you got to hold back a bit. We can't really put all our eggs in the Aussie basket. And Nitro didn't even play like a primary AWPer. He just did the AWP on certain CT sides where it made sense. And quite frankly, other than that, he was just an IGL. He essentially can be, it's one of the only teams ever where it's like, actually, this already plays like a Heroic does, in the sense that, like, we know how it is to have an IGL who's an AWPer and the IGL. And guess what? He doesn't have to be the best player. So if anything, this could be Nitro 2.0. But the one problem is this. Cadian was doing all the calling in Danish. Now, you're all going to go, but he was on Rogue Thorin, not as an IGL. But he speaks English. Speaking English is very different from calling in English. Like, I'll guarantee in Danish, he has the way they communicate. Like, I bet it was almost telepathic in that team. First of all, here's another thing. He also had that core for a long time, mate. It's not like he was someone swapping players in and out. So we actually don't know yet what Cadian calls like in English outside of that team. So it's not guaranteed. But I do think if you look how he opted, I was critical of him on Heroic. If this lineup works, he could be fucking amazing as the IGL knob on this one. I think this could really be like a god tier move. So I'm on the one hand, I'm super excited, but man, there's a lot of question marks. It's like almost everyone's got a question.
I feel like the Cadian angle is the most interesting one,
it is,
because if you think about it, I see it as a make or break for Cadian to almost enter the pantheon of IGLs. This is how I see it, because if he can actually make that work in Liquid, close to what he was getting out of Heroic, then this would qualify him as one of the greatest, just almost immediately for me in terms of his ability as a leader. Because you have to imagine what actually made Heroic at the time, and the signature playstyle they had and everything that everyone was always referring to, is how spontaneous and fast they were, and super pacey and gambly and all over the place. And obviously we're going to put a whole lot of that onto Cadian because he came up with that playstyle, and then he had to be super active, and also he represented them as a captain from the outside. So that's my question. Cadian found himself in Heroic in a position where he had everyone's ears, as we could see as events are unfolding currently as we speak. Maybe some people had a little bit of frustration in there, but whether they liked it or not, Cadian's had everyone's ear, everyone's respect. And if you were in Heroic, you were under Cadian's tutelage, and that's it. There's no debate. He's the leader. You do whatever he wants. Now he's gonna be brought into a project with established players that became established and successful to an extent without him. They don't owe him nothing. They were here. NAF was here before Cadian. If you're Twistzz, you've obviously won arguably more than Cadian ever has. So that's my point. Like, Cadian has a huge challenge to be able to say, hey, listen, guys, like whatever it is I was doing in Heroic, trust me, some of it is right. Like, I'm going to have to respect the Counter-Strike that you want to play. I'm going to have to respect you as profiles and trying to learn from you and get something together. But some of the Counter-Strike I was playing with Heroic was working. So hear me out. And this is going to be such a deep process to be able to have everyone buy into this idea. I don't even know if Cadian wants to play the Heroic playstyle anymore. We don't even know that. Maybe he wants to play a different Counter-Strike. I have him in my head as such a very, like, illustrated, almost boxed in IGL. Like, if you tell me Counter-Strike, Cadian, I immediately envision how the Counter-Strike is being played, much more than other players. Now he's going to have a whole brand new lineup where the necessity of cohesion and synergy of that Heroic playstyle are never going to be reached immediately in Liquid. Just never. Just not even, like, notwithstanding the fact that Cadian is going to speak English, which obviously in itself is a challenge. But people need to understand that in order for Heroic to play the playstyle that they were, they had to have close to perfect communication and intensity level. And this is one of the reasons why sometimes they were faltering in like semifinals and finals, because these moments were like kind of testing the limits of how calm you can remain while having high energy, because that's required from the playstyle. You're going to tell me that they can actually reach that level as an international team from the scratch? I don't believe you. I just don't. So how do they deal with that? How does he deal with that? How do the team deal with that? That's like, from an analyst perspective and a lover of the game, it's like tantalizing. Like, what the hell is going to happen?
I'm with you on that, by the way. Like, as the last point, what I would say is this. I agree. I actually think you'd even be a fool to try and do the heroic playing style. Because as you said, those were basically his boys that he taught to play that style. He obviously fitted to his personnel, and they got the team play to an insane level while all speaking the same language, come from the same culture, the same team. Everything was the same. So in that scenario, I would give the analogy, this might be like the lesson Zonic had to learn when he went to Vitalik, which is, guess what? They can't play like Astralis, mate. Even if you get Astralis players, they might not be able to, because you know what? Apex wasn't an Astralis player. Fucking Spinks wasn't an Astralis player. Like, they aren't those guys. And you're speaking in English, you've got a different culture. That part's one of it. And then I'd certainly agree as well, because I'll give you another angle that people might not realise, which is when you look at the whole reason Yekindar became an IGL, it looks like, because, I mean, look, I get it. If you're a star entry, the worst thing in the world is you think the calls aren't good or they're not the call that they should be, because you feel like you're just getting fucking neutralised, you're getting limited. All the fans are going, come here, you Kindar fans. And you're like, he called that. I would have never got in there. He called like 3 blind rushes. You know, like, that does happen if you're an IGL. So I will say, another angle is, you are Cadian, but at the end of the day, you're not Zonic, mate. Like, you haven't won like 4 majors or something. Like, if someone like Yekindar, he can go to you, like, look, you're really good, but you didn't win the major either. Like, what? Maybe I don't like what you're doing. Maybe you have to win. Maybe there's buy-in from me you have to get, because obviously, I mean, I'll just say it straight up. I think your Kindad just gradually cocked fucking Nitro. Like, he started out like, hey, I'm just here to, entry. Glad to be here on loan, guys. Wow, we had a great run. You've got a few ideas for, some things about what we were doing in VP. And then, you saw how the interviews went. Then it would be like, suddenly everyone had to say, like, yes, he's teaching us a lot about the game. All the shit I was lampooning. And then by the end, it was like, oh, Nitro was just like 5 minutes late. So I was just going to call this game. Maybe I called all the maps. The way it gradually happened, he like infringed upon his territory. It's like basically the joke. It's like when you're in bed and then they keep moving over and over. And eventually you're like, I haven't got any fucking room over here. I'm going to fall out if I don't do this. That's another thing we all take for granted, because I agree with you there, by the way. The buy-in is very different when you took people from nothing to where they were in Heroic. That's different when, as you say, you walk in. Because basically, by the way, if you're someone like Naf and Twistzz especially, you're only here to win. Naf stayed and Twistzz came back to win another Grand Slam. By the way, to win the major. Naf's wanted to win the major at this point in his career, mate. You think, I mean, he said it in my interview, you think he couldn't do what Twistzz did? Like, he's one of the ones who was looking at Twistzz going over to Europe, getting into a super team with a great player and thinking, whoa, why can't I do that? Like, why couldn't I be on Vitality and be there lurking? You know what I mean? Like, that was in his, so I think, quite frankly, there's another thing. To us, this is fun. Like, will they be good? Will they be not? I think they essentially do. If you can do this, like, eventually you have to be the best. You have to win championships. You can do this roster.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.